Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel and welcome to another try chapter video. I actually haven't filmed one of these for a while. I know I've had them going up fairly regularly, but I actually haven't sat down to film one for a bit. And we are on the camera that the sound quality can be a little bit dodgy sometimes, so I'm going to apologise just because I need the way that this one processes the light because my other one doesn't do so great and I'm really struggling with my actual external lighting, and because it's winter I only have like so much natural light. So long story short, we're having to work with the equipment that we have, and I'll talk more about that probably in another video relatively soon. It is the final weekend of the regular hockey season here in Australia. Next weekend is our finals weekend. Our finals are actually played over a 3-day weekend because there's only this year 8 teams in the league. It's coming down to the wire for 3 teams in the league, including my own. So I'm very hockey obsessed at the moment. I want to know exactly what's going on, and so we are going to be doing a tri-chapter hockey romance edition because I still have 48 unread hockey romance books on my Kindle and we need to make some progress here. So if you're at all unfamiliar with how I've run my tri-chapter videos, I'm doing 12 of them this year. So I'm using a random number generator on my phone. I'm matching that number to the number of the book on my Kindle folder, which I will pop a video over the top of me talking, showing you all of the 48 hockey romance books that currently sit in that folder. And then I try the first chapter of all of those books, and then towards the end I will maybe pick one to read and review. I think in the last video I introduced a new rule because I've done so many of these and there are a lot of books that I have tried the first chapter of. If one of those comes up in this video, I have to make a decision of either I'm DNFing it or I have to read it in this video and it counts as an extra book. There are some anthologies in here. I may or may not count them. I'll see what I feel like if they pop up in the video. Normally I would film this video over one day, but just because of the way this weekend is going, I've got birthdays and events and I've got to plan for taking leave at the end of the next week. We'll see if I can do it over 2 days. And I'm excited because I haven't done, like I said, I haven't done one of these in ages and I really do enjoy them. And hopefully either via deciding that I no longer want to read these books or just I'm really excited and I want to continue to read them, I'm going to read down this folder, which would be amazing. That's the long-winded intro. Let's get to this. So what I always do with my number generator is this is the number that I landed on last time. So I'm going to select 3 numbers and the third number is the one that we're going to start with. So 1, 2, 3. Book 30 is Face Off by Mari Loyal, which should be exciting because the FMC in this story is also a hockey player. Right, next number is 32. Well, that's not far off. Is Power Play by BP Gilmore, which I think I've heard good things about. Although if you have been around my channel for a while, you might know that I did try to film a vlog where I was reading hockey romance books but that all had the same title, and Power Play was one of the words and it did not go well. So I don't know if that's an omen for the book, but we'll see. 47, which is Iced by Cala, I think. I'm not sure if that's the author's name because I can't see it because it's got the Kindle Unlimited tag underneath it. 36. Loving the 30s today, which is As Far As We Knew by Alyssa Milani. Lots of new to me authors, which is great. Oh, I accidentally touched the screen when I picked it up. It's 11, sorry. That's such a me thing to do. All right, that is Bite the Ice by LA Cotton. Don't touch the screen. 33. We are liking the 30s. Okay, so this one is Hunks Who Puck, the complete series by Lina George. Obviously, I'm not going to read the entire series, but I will try the first chapter of the first book that's obviously in this collection. All right, next one is 6, which is Rigs by Sawyer Bennett, which you guys will know that Sawyer Bennett was, all of the Sawyer Bennett books were on my series to read this year and I had to reset because I only had a couple of books and otherwise I had to purchase all of them and I couldn't get many of them through my local library system. So this is kind of nice that I get to sort of dive back into one of those series because I do genuinely enjoy them. But I think Riggs is much further through the series. 38. That's Mr. Heartbreaker by Piper Rayne, which I really enjoyed the other book that I read by Piper Rayne in this same series, so I think this is the first one. All right, 12 is Cap by Elise Faber. That's another author I've read. I think I always mix up Elise Faber's hockey romance series. I've read a couple of books in the series, but I never remember which ones the series are. And then lucky last is 3, which is Rebound by LA Witt. No repeats of anything, so I'm not forced to read anything extra. Let's dive into the first book, which is going to be Face Off by Mari Loyal. so the first chapter of Face Off is from Max's perspective. It is a college hockey romance, and he has just been scouted to the new college team that he's playing for. He decides he wants to get to the ice first on the very first day of training, and when he gets there he sees someone else already on the ice, and they are much smaller than he is. They're very fast, but he is quite judgmental by the fact that they are shorter, and obviously they can't possibly be on his team, right? And it turns out that the other person is Luz, who is a female hockey player, and they literally face off against each other verbally from the moment that they meet. I don't know, like, I really want to read about a female hockey player, but I really don't want to read about jerk college guys who clearly don't believe that women should be playing hockey. And obviously he's obviously going to turn his opinion around and whatever, because it's a romance, but just the lack of respect for the fact that she couldn't possibly be a hockey player, and how dare she be on his ice, is off-putting to me. So I'm gonna have to think on this one, because I don't know if I want to persevere through it. All right, so the next chapter we're going to try is Power Play by BP Gilmore. Alright, so Power Play is a professional hockey player team. It's a why choose MMF romance. So we start the first chapter in Diego's perspective, and they're just about to play their final preseason game, and he's determined to win this game because they got close to the Stanley Cup finals last year but didn't quite make it, and he feels like he's starting to age out of the game and he wants a cup win before he does that. And it's mostly the team in the locker room. There's some banter. He's reflecting sort of on his career. He wants to make captain this year, and there is another member of his team, Francois, who he has a rocky relationship with, so there's some banter back and forth between them, but that's kind of all you really get. So nothing bad, nothing of true note has happened yet, although we know Francois is going to be the other male love interest in this story. So it's a potential, and now we are going to try Iced by Cala Riley. Alright, so I feel like I need to probably give Iced a couple more chapters to make a decision about it. So I read the prologue and the first chapter, and in the prologue and the first chapter we start out in Grace's perspective. She is our female protagonist. In the prologue, it's at the end of high school. She is best friends with Kellen, who is a hockey player, and they've been best friends for ages, and she suggests that they take their friendship to the next level, and he shuts her down. And obviously this is embarrassing for her, but they decide they are better as friends and they want to stay friends. And then we jump forward to college, and Kellen is playing college hockey and Grace is going to his first game, and she's there with her roommate, and they're talking about some of the different players, and it's obviously going to be a relationship between Grace and the captain of the team, Clayton, who is a very solid player. He's been playing well for the last 2 years, but obviously probably I suspect the conflict is going to be the fact that Grace ends up in a relationship with Clayton and not Kellen or Kellen. I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, I think I need a few more chapters to work out whether I do actually like these characters together, and that it's worth putting up with the drama that's probably going to happen. So the first chapter we're going to try is As Far As We Knew It by Alyssa Milani. So the book had a prologue that was as long as a chapter, which I don't know why hockey romances need prologues. I really don't. So I'm not reading the next chapter, and I probably won't continue this one. It starts off with our two protagonists meeting each other. They don't know each other's names. They're flirting. One of them is a conspiracy theorist, and they have a great nerdy time talking about that kind of thing, and then they go home and have the one night stand. There was just something about the writing style that didn't quite work for me. I'm pretty sure it was written in third person because we're jumping between both characters at the same time, which doesn't necessarily work for me in a romance, and especially not in a love scene. I was having trouble keeping track of initially who was thinking what and what was going on, and then there's a couple of word choices that just were not my favorite. So I'm thinking this is probably a miss for me, which is fine. But we are going to try the first chapter, which is Bite the Ice by LA Cotton. Alright, so Bite the Ice is a prequel novella length story. It's about 84 pages to a series, which is always a bonus point in its favour, and I actually quite enjoyed the chapter. It's from Connor's perspective. He is obviously on the hockey team. It's a college hockey romance, and they're preparing for it's a themed party at their house. It's all decked out, and we find out that Connor is in love with a girl and she won't give him the time of day. So that's kind of the chapter. And being 84 pages long, like, this is definitely a potential, because it's something I can easily read in a day and tick off the list, and I didn't hate the writing, so that's always a bonus. So now we are going to try Hunks Who Puck by Lina George, and I'll figure out whatever the first book in that series is. So I read the prologue of this collection, and I will retract my previous statement about prologues and hockey romances in this case, but only in this case, because what it seems like is this collection is a lot of really short hockey romances, somewhere between 60 and 100 pages long each in one collection. So the whole collection is like 890 pages, but there's like 10 different stories in here. And the prologue is really setting up the team, and I suspect all of the characters that we're going to follow in the team. So while the prologue doesn't actually feature any romance, it's actually a game. It's the first game of the season, they're all playing, and it is basically every moment until the final buzzer where they lose the first game of the season. And we're introduced to so many of the different characters that we're obviously going to meet in the other stories. So in that case, like, I think that is a really interesting way to do a collection like this, and to have a lot of short stories with romances, but center it around the team, which is what a lot of hockey romance series do, but this is going to be much more condensed. So I don't know, like, this one, I don't think I'm going to read it today because it's 800 plus pages long, but I think I could come back to this one because the actual individual stories are much shorter. All right, now we're going to try the first chapter of Rigs by Sawyer Bennett. Alright, so the first chapter of Rigs opens with Rigs and his teenage sister, who he is currently the guardian of, attending a team party. And they both are relatively new to the Arizona Vengeance, and Rigs hasn't really been able to settle in and become as close to his teammates as he would have at his previous teams, because he's also caring for his teenage sister, who's also going through her own things. She's left her mother to come and live with her brother in a new state and is just struggling a bit. So they're both very unsettled at the moment, and he's had to bribe her, or actually threaten her, to come to the party because it's a family party. And when he gets there, she connects with one of the kids of his teammates, and then some of his other teammates converge and kind of get him talking about what's going on with Janelle, and they try to help him by, you know, helping her find a part-time job to keep her busy and to help her connect with other people, and kind of getting him a little bit more involved in the conversation. So I think it's definitely going to be one of those conversations. I'm not quite sure who the female protagonist is going to be in this story yet. The second chapter doesn't begin from her perspective, so we're still with Riggs, who at the end of the first chapter is driving his teammate and his teammate's pregnant wife to hospital because she's gone into labor, and his teammate is in no state to drive. Very solid, like, good character work in the first chapter in terms of diving really deeply into who this character is. So that was good. And now we're going to read the first chapter of Mr. Heartbreaker by Piper Rayne. So the first chapter of Mr. Heartbreaker is from Kylie's perspective. She works with her mother, and I think they must be seamstresses, or they design wedding dresses. She's at the wedding of one of the brides whose dress she and her mother have helped design and make, and she tends to go to the weddings instead of her mother, who can't always make them anymore. And she takes her best friend as her date, but her friend wants to get home to her partner, and so she says, that's fine, I'm going to leave soon anyway, so you might as well go. At the bar, she sees the former teammate of her brother. So her brother is Connor, who is the goalie. So I think I've read his story. I think that's the story that I've read in this series. She recognizes the guy at the bar. He used to play with Connor, and even though she has always promised her brother she'll never date one of his current teammates, part of her thinking is, well, he's a past teammate, so technically that's not a thing. And the first chapter is her debating whether to leave or to approach him at the bar, and as the chapter ends, she goes to the bar. Solid writing. I'm intrigued. I've had success with this author before, so that's always a positive. Next up, we are going to try the first chapter of Cap by Elise Faber. So the first chapter of Cap introduces Jess. She's our point of view character. She is a video coach for the Gold hockey team, and she is sitting in on a team meeting, and she says, you know, she's not really required there. She's a video coach. Her job is creating the clips that the coaches then use with players. She chooses to sit in on those meetings because she enjoys hockey. She wants to know more about it. She wants to know more about the sort of the technical side of things, so that when she is finding the video clips and things like that, she has a better understanding, which I would assume would just be part of the job anyway, but what do I know? I don't know anything about the behind the scenes stuff in a hockey team. She is annoyed because one of the players has chosen to sit right next to her. His name is Josh, and they had a meeting that didn't quite go so well the very first time they met 3 years earlier, when he made a comment that he didn't know that girls did her job. And she's taken that to heart. She does state that she's a Leo and that she can hold a grudge, and I mean, relatable. I'm not a Leo, but I think any woman can hold a grudge against someone who makes a comment like that. And she does say that, you know, in the 3 years since, there's never been anything else he said that is in any way inappropriate like that. He just irritates her. And so he's sitting next to her and he's asked to borrow a pencil, and she's just annoyed at him. You can just feel her tension. She's like, I'm annoyed at you. And she is holding the pencil to give it to him, and he makes a comment and says, without the side of stabbing, please, which I think is hilarious. I think these two will have an interesting dynamic. I have read the first 3 books in the Gold hockey series. This one is like book 16 or 17 or something like that, but I am intrigued. The only thing that I have to say about this is Elise Faber, particularly this far down in this series, gets one more chance of, if there are any Harry Potter references in her books, I'm done. Not that they were already in the first chapter, but that was my main issue with the previous 2 books that I read by her, so we shall see. Anyway, onwards to the last chapter that we're trying today, which is Rebound by Witt. Rebound is an hockey romance. So we're in Jeff's perspective. Jeff is a single dad. He's in his 40s. He's a cop. He's gotten out of a really toxic relationship with his boyfriend of 6 years after previously being married to his children's mother. And his children currently aren't very happy with him for breaking up with his boyfriend, who was toxic in the way that he showered everyone with gifts and made them feel like they were the most important thing in his life, but really he was trying to control Jeff. Another thing I will say at this point about Witt is I love how they are just able to casually build in queerness into their stories effortlessly. So we find out in the first chapter just Jeff is either bisexual or pansexual. That's not clarified, but his daughter has transitioned, and like it's just very chill. While I'm not overly fond of cop stories, Jeff and his partner Laura have a really good balance. They end up on a call where 2 men are arguing in the car park of a restaurant, and they're big guys, and Jeff recognizes that one of the guys looks really familiar. He's a young guy, he's in his 20s, and another guy is just yelling in his face, and all the witnesses say that the guy that's yelling broke plates and caused a scene inside the restaurant. And what we find out is that the younger guy, Asher, is the professional hockey player, and he is very famous. He's thought to be the next big thing, and he's been in this relationship with this guy, and he purposely came to the restaurant to break up with him because of domestic violence. And he chose a public place because he wanted it to be public, because he knew that the ramifications of that from his now former partner would be less than if it had happened at home. And he's telling Jeff this story, and Jeff is obviously seeing this mirrored in both his own experience but also in the experiences that he has seen of other cases like this. And so really the first chapter is Jeff and Laura getting statements from these guys and making sure that Asher is okay and getting him home. And obviously this is going to be Jeff and Asher's story. I think the one difference with this book compared to every other first chapter that I have read today is how deeply I'm immersed and invested in these characters' stories. Probably because, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but I tend to go for the ones that are a gut punch. And I probably have to do a video talking about this, because I will always pick something that has something driving the narrative that is more external conflict. And while I don't know at this point in the story whether there's like a third act breakup or anything like that, the external conflict for both of these men in this story is that they have come from really bad relationships, and so there's a lot of work to be done on the part of themselves in order to be able to move forward with future relationships. And I find that really interesting because I think it just adds a layer into the character development. So all that said, even though that this is the longest individual standalone novel, I'm probably going to read this one because I'm invested in this one. It's funny because I've actually had Rebound on my Kindle for a while. It was one of those books that I actually really like the cover of this. I think it's just really striking for a hockey romance. I mean, there's no people on it, but it caught my eye the first time I saw it, and knowing LA Witt, and who often writes with Anna Szabo, who I also really enjoyed their writing as well. Like, I haven't really had a miss from either of those authors, and I don't know if you guys caught it in the little clip I had of flipping through the first couple of pages of the ebook. I suspect this was probably LA Witt's first hockey romance, because they did talk about Anna Szabo convincing them to write a hockey romance. So I'm kind of curious to see where this goes, because this book already is following the same kind of trend that I've seen in the books that they have co-written with Anna Szabo, in really deep themes, uncomfortable themes at times. But yeah, I'm excited to, like, I'm genuinely very excited to continue reading this and seeing where this relationship goes. And I want to see the relationship with Jeff's kids as well, because I do like kids in stories, but I like them when they're done well, and I want to see how this plays out, because Jeff is not a young guy with kids. He's in his 40s. He has responsibilities and priorities and, you know, dependents who he is responsible for, and their health and well-being, which is why he got out of his relationship in the first place. It's funny how much you can get out of a 20-ish page first chapter, right? Anyway, I've waxed lyrical long enough about the first chapter of this book, so I will probably continue this later tonight and update you over the next day or so as to how I go with it. Hi everyone, it is the next day and I am back to update you on how I went with reading the two books. I actually did finish them yesterday. I'm back home now, and I finished off Bite the Ice by L.A. Cotton, which was the novella, and I'm gonna say this one is very much a 2.5 star kind of read. It was very meh after the first chapter. So as I said, it's a prequel to a series, and we are following Ella and Connor, who had a one-night stand years earlier, and 2.5 years later they're finally together at the Bite the Ice party, which is one of the frat parties with the hockey players, and they come face to face, and Connor is determined to win Ella back, despite the fact that after their one-night stand years earlier he ghosted her, left a note, and that was done and dusted. That was their relationship, it was gone. And so she's obviously understandably annoyed by this and has tried to move on since then, but of course once they're back in each other's orbit, they all come back together, and it just felt a little overdone, which is why I don't like reading college aged stuff at the moment, because okay, sure, might be appropriate for that age group, but I'm no longer in that age category and I just don't have time for that BS, because she should not have gone back with him. There was not enough groveling. So anyway, that was Bite the Ice, and then I finished Rebound by L.A. Witt. How funny that both these authors start with their initials LA. Anyway, and if you're wondering if it took me 24 hours to realize that I picked two books by authors with the same initials, yes I did, or at least the first two initials. Rebound is not a perfect book by any stretch, and it definitely has some things in it that I'm not overly fond of, like cops and whatever, but this book was so interesting to read. I think I mentioned at the start, we started off in Jeff's perspective. He is older, he is in his mid-40s, and he was a former Marine turned cop. He is separated from his ex-wife. They have 2 children who are both teens, and he's also recently gotten out of a really toxic relationship with a guy who was financially and emotionally manipulative. And so that's his story. And then he responds to a call where one of the most famous current hockey players is in a shouting match with his partner in a restaurant parking lot. So that's Asher. And Jeff and Asher sort of bond over the fact that they have these relationships in common. And in fact, Jeff empathizes really deeply with what Asher's going through and is able to help, talk him through some of the things and reassure Asher that, what he's feeling is totally normal. And Asher's ex-boyfriend continues to send him messages, continues to try and show up at his house, is harassing him, etc. And Jeff is able there to support Asher, and then sort of they realize that they are mutually attracted to one another. They want to pursue a relationship. They know it can't be necessarily public straight away, and Jeff is kind of hesitant to speak to his kids about it because his kids are still reeling from the previous breakup, because they believed that the other guy walked on water because he would pay for everything for him, hence the financial manipulation. After an incident that happens where Jeff is injured, Asher, is revealed to be Jeff's boyfriend to his family. And I will say, Jeff's ex-wife, who is also a former Marine, and his current partner in the police force. They are excellent characters in this book. He has a really strong support network around him of people who know when to tell him to pull his head in. And the kids, I think, were really well done because they're at that age where they understand but they don't understand. And Jeff is grappling with, you know, how much do I tell them about what happened in the previous relationship? And he does eventually have to talk to them about it because his previous partner organizes to meet the kids for lunch without Jeff knowing and tells the kids not to tell Jeff. And he's like, well, that's a huge red flag, right? So there's a whole lot of things sort of going on in the background, and Asher is struggling with whether or not to tell his teammates that he was in a violent, abusive relationship with a partner where he was the victim, because he's, I think it said he's the only out player in the professional league in this series so far. He cops a lot of flack for that. Oh God, that's such an Australian turn of phrase. Sorry guys. So he catches heat for that. So he's struggling with, you know, who he actually lets in. Like, Jeff is one of the only people, and there is a breakup in this. I think I mentioned I was kind of hoping there wasn't going to be a breakup because I wanted the conflict to be external, but the breakup was because the conflict was external. And it's both of these guys having to really work through and understand themselves because they question their interactions with each other based on their previous relationships. So there are times where they really feel like they're walking on eggshells. They do really need therapy. They do get therapy eventually. But I appreciated that because I think that is a reality when you start questioning whether you're with someone because they're the opposite of a previous partner. Or I think one of the things that was mentioned is that Jeff sometimes has, or quite often has, nightmares as, you know, PTSD from being in active combat. And at one point, without realizing it, he's had a nightmare and he's woken up and he's elbowed Asher in his sleep, which has then triggered his guilt on, I've just hit him. And he's come out of a physically abusive relationship. And so they've got all those elements to navigate. But what I think I really liked about it is, one, they do have a support network, and their support network is very quick to point out that they make each other happy. And they're not actively trying to hurt the other person, and they are having conversations when they arise, because I think at one point Asher offers to pay for something, which is a trigger for Jeff, and Jeff does have that conversation with him, but he doesn't realize the impact that has on Asher then, because then he's like, oh my God, then he starts spiraling and they have to have the conversation again. I kind of like that dynamic because it was always going to be messy. We knew, like, as soon as you know the setup for this book, you know it's going to be messy because these are characters who've been through trauma and it's going to be messy. But I like how that was handled. I don't know if there's anything else I can say about it. I enjoyed it. I liked it a lot. It's the first book in a series, so I'll have to go and see what the other books are about, whether or not I continue the series, but I did enjoy it. And I think it was, for the subject matter, it was handled really well. Which means that from this video, we started at 48 books in my hockey folder, and I DNF'd 2. So I DNF'd Face Off and As Far As We Knew, so they're not going to be read at all. Power Play and Iced are still books I'd probably give a couple more chapters. I don't know if I would continue them. Same with Hunks at Puck, but those are all going to be super short, so there's a very good chance I'll just read through them. And then I read Bite the Ice and Rebound, which leaves Riggs, Mr. Heartbreaker and Cap as other books to also revisit at some point. That should mean that we are down to 44 books, or 44 unread books in that folder, which is nice. Thank you very much for watching. By the time this video goes up, it could possibly be finals weekend for hockey for me. Maybe. I'm definitely in hockey mode at the moment. My sister did tell me I was obsessed, and I'm like, well, you're obsessed about other things. This is what I've chosen to focus on for the moment. Don't be surprised if you see more hockey romances in the coming months, especially once the finals weekend is done and I have no hockey. On that note, in the comments, I'd love to know if you've read any of these books. Are you planning on picking any of them up? Or if you have recommendations, feel free to leave them for me down below. Otherwise, feel free to leave a hockey related emoji to let me know you're here. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.